Hello there. Today I want to talk to you about capturing movement with your camera intentionally. There are two forms of movements that I could think of in my experience that you can capture. One of them is fairly common. You could stand or sit or stage yourself to photograph in an environment that has a sharp background and just simply wait for somebody to walk past, and then you snap the shot, thus creating a sharp background but a blurred image of the individual walking in front of your camera. Second is focusing on the individual, targeting on the individual, and tracking him or panning with him, and then snapping the shot. And then everything in the background is going to be blurred, but whoever's forward, the individual, is going to be about as tack sharp or about as sharp as you can get it. This is what you're trying for, is that effect, to have that individual, your target, your storytelling, as sharp as possible. And that's what I'm going to talk to you about. Hello. I'm Charles Abels, local photographer in and around Prescott Valley, Arizona, and today it's my hope to have fun with y'all and show you how to capture movement with your camera. And that is my goal. Unfortunately for us in Prescott, they have an event today. It's actually a 3-day event. It started yesterday, but that was Friday and I was at work. Today is Saturday. And it's the Whiskey Off-Road Mountain Bike Race. And it starts in downtown Prescott. And there's a lot of activities downtown. But for me, I'm not necessarily keen and fond of mountain bike or racings with mountain bikes. But when it comes in terms of photography, it's a great place to go to photograph the activities. My hope is we're going to capture mountain bikers, bicyclists hauling in to the finish line downtown Prescott, and we're going to try to capture a sense of movement with a camera, as well as photograph other activities. I mean, it could be best described as today Prescott is going to be a cornucopia of photography, an opportunity to take photographs. But before we go there, I'm going to share with you how you would do that, how you would set your camera up and take a photograph of movement. What I'm going to primarily talk about is the panning method. Now, the panning method is just simply you're pointing the camera at the individual and you're tracking them as you squeeze the shutter. This is going to create the illusion of movement because everything in the background is going to be blurred, the subject's going to be sharp. But how do you do that? That's the trick. You have to remember the exposure triangle. That is the important thing. And I should point that out. Everything I'm talking to you about is for the daylight hours. You have to come up with these tricks, as it were, to slow down your shutter speed. And this is where the understanding of the exposure triangle comes in. There are 3 factors that you need to consider to help. The intent is to slow down the shutter as much as possible. So we have 2 options that we work with. The first option is adjusting your ISO. If you have a digital camera, adjust your ISO down to, if you can, down to 50. 100 will do on the ISO, but if you can get it down any lower than that, I would try to do that. And then the second thing to consider is your aperture. Bring it up to f16. That's your diameter of your aperture is going to get smaller and smaller, and if you can, bring it down even to f22. What that will do, of course, is that will let less light in. The ISO down to 50 is a slow speed on the sensor, or in this case I have a film camera I plan on bringing with me. I got 100 ASA, so it's a slow film speed. So you slow down your ISO and your film speed, and you fundamentally shrink up your aperture to 16, 20, f16, f22 if you can. You try to prevent as much light in there as possible, and then that's when you can adjust your shutter speed to as slow as possible, 1/15th of a second preferably. 1/30th of a second should work, but I like to try to get her down to about 1/15th of a second. The whole intent is slow the shutter speed down, and it will allow you to briefly track that individual, creating a sharp photo of the individual, the subject of the story that you're trying to create, and everything in the background is blurred. It's much like, say, portrait photography. The main subject is the person you're photographing. Everything in the background is not as important. We're not dealing with landscape where depth of field is important. We're dealing with up close and personal, a means of telling a story. So when you photograph that individual in a portrait, you're telling a story about that individual. When you're at, say, the mountain bike race that I plan on going to today, you're telling a story of the subject that you're capturing as he's racing to get to the finish line. Everything else in the background, people, buildings, scenery, whatever, that is not important. And that is what is great, in my opinion, of panning and creating movement. You're wanting to tell the story. That is another form of telling a story. A runner, a sports game, this mountain bike race as an example. Heck, you can even use it telling a story in a busy city street, and you want to photograph a pretty car that grabbed you. So you want to slow it down and focus and just tell your story about that car that's moving across the photograph. So the key thing to consider is, and this is where you need to have, again, an understanding of exposure, is you want to get the slowest film speed or sensor sensitivity as possible. That's usually a 50 ISO, or in this case I'm going to try the 100 ASA film. Then you want to close up the aperture, allowing the aperture to do the work and slowing down any amount of light coming through the lens. The work is your adjustment of the shutter speed and you panning or tracking your subject as you take a picture. So that is the plan today. I hope I get some good pictures so I can share those with you. Without further ado, I'm going to pack up my stuff and get ready, and then in a couple of hours hit the road and get into Prescott, and from there we're going to have fun and take some shots. So I hope you enjoy what I share with you.
Bicycles, and when you told me you thought you could talk to animals, I remember dirty dishes in the sink.
Well, I'm packed up and I'm heading home. I just wanted to bring you up to speed. We got a lot of pictures and I think they turned out well. The highlight that I want to talk to you about is I forgot to mention that with the digital camera, I forgot to mention that I had set it up to continuously shoot. So when I pan as the individual was going across in front of me, I was shooting at a continuous rate, medium, and I ended up shooting my whole roll of black and white film as well. So I'll be interested to see how those turn out. But I hope you enjoyed this presentation. I hope you subscribe to my channel if you enjoy it. I want to thank those that have. So without further ado, we'll catch you later.